Hey, I'm Taylor Smith, and the movie I chose was Tombstone. It's a 1993 film with Kurt Russell and Val Kilmer. It's set in Arizona, in the town of Tombstone, between 1879 and 1885, and it depicts the events around Tombstone and the neighboring towns, gunfights, gangs of outlaws, lawmen, um, and just pretty much everything that shapes Tombstone into what it is today. And historically and chronologically, the first scene we see is correct. Wyatt Earp decides to retire and moves to Tombstone with his wife and his two brothers, Virgil and Morgan, and their wives. Wyatt was a retired officer whose reputation preceded him. He was known as a lawman, a ruthless lawman, a guard in a saloon, a real estate owner, gunslinger, con artist, and he really loved the nightlife, and that's very accurately portrayed in the movie. Along with his three brothers, they also meet up with Wyatt's long-term friend Doc Holliday, who was from Georgia. He was actually a dentist and adopted the name Doc. But he had tuberculosis and had moved around and everything, and they told him that he needed to come to a drier climate for relief from his tuberculosis. In Tombstone, there's a band of outlaws called the Cowboys who are characterized for their red sashes. This is a picture of Johnny Ringo, one of the key players in the Cowboys. They ruled the region, and just lawlessness was just ran wild around the time. One of their leaders, Curly Bill, actually killed Marshal Fred White, and it led Virgil Earp to impose a weapons ban in town. White joins Virgil, Morgan, and Doc, and they become peace officers because of that. Their first encounter with the Cowboys was at a gambling establishment where Doc declared his hatred for Ringo, another key player. In the red shirt, we have Curly Bill, and in the black shirt, black hat next to him, we have Ringo. And this just, every encounter, tensions just continue to rise every time, which eventually led to a standoff between Doc and Ringo. This is Curly Bill. I've already talked about that, and the murder of the marshal. Wyatt was the one who arrested him because of that, and that led to tension between Doc and the Earp brothers and the outlaws, which later would manifest into the shootout that took place at the OK Corral. The gunfight at the OK Corral was fairly accurate in the movie. The original fight between the outlaws and law enforcement. It lasted 30 seconds and resulted in the death of two outlaw brothers, together with a fellow cowboy. And two Earp brothers suffered injuries during that, but Wyatt surprisingly came out without any harm. The historical fight accurately represented how the West was truly wild. Law enforcement officers were lacking authority, and outlaws freely roamed the region unopposed by present authority. It seemed to mix. Sheriff Behan at the time, it's also in historical records, he was, when everything was taken to court in front of a judge, he was on the side of the outlaws, opposing the Earps. They took offense after the outlaws had constantly insinuated something would happen to them, and started the shootout. The result was a retaliation after that by the Cowboys to avenge the killing of their members. Morgan Earp was killed in the club while playing pool, and Virgil was wounded. At this time, Wyatt Earp decides him and his family need to move out of town. They need to go. But the Cowboys ambushed him at the train station and White killed one and let the other one go, and said that he would kill any man wearing a red sash, and that was the beginning of the Vendetta ride to rid the region of lawlessness. And this is his actual quote from the movie. The vendetta came as the only retribution for the death of his brother and disabling of the other. White didn't find satisfaction in the law. All the suspects had been set free, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. And this deadly ride consisted of White, Doc Holliday, a man named Sherman, Texas Jack, and Turkey. The search led them to a riverside forest where the cowboys ambushed them amid open fire. White walks into the river. Curly Bill took a shot at him and barely missed, and White fires his double-barreled shotgun and kills Curly Bill. He also killed several other of the cowboys, and it was a miraculous survival, and it kind of played into his legendary status. It was retribution for him, and it was just so miraculous to them. Even in the movie, there's a quote that says, where someone asked Doc after the fact, they said, "Where's White?" And he said, "Down by the creek, walking on water." So Ringo pretended to parlay and invited one of the posses, after which he killed him and dragged his body by messenger. The message was clear. He wanted to end the killings. White agreed, but Doc beat him to the showdown. He killed Ringo in a duel, and it marked the end of the mounting tension between Doc and Ringo. The most significant event was chasing down of Clanton on horseback, where he escapes by throwing the red sash, which signified his renunciation of the Cowboys ban. That meant there'd be no more cowboys, and White's mission to rid the earth of them was a success. Now, throughout the movie, it shows the robust culture. It shows Josephine and Mr. Fabian's troop and the gentlemen and ladies of Tombstone, and it shows them in their dress and the cowboys and other low-class citizens, and they were very particular when dressing for this movie, for setting the scene for this movie. The nightlife was pretty accurate, theater activities, and there were so many characteristics of the actual Wild West that were historically accurate in this movie. Long-distance mode of transportation was by rail, horse-drawn carriages, the hard-packed grounds. There was no specified route for those on horseback. The general direction would lead one there. Horses didn't discriminate on the road used. The corsets, the way the women dressed, the way the men dressed, it's all taken into account. And this is actually a picture of Doc Holliday in the movie. The dialogues in the film were a classic representation of how people conversed with each other. They revealed the true nature of the characters. In this case, outlaws and law enforcement officers. The dialogue between White and Josephine reveals White's desire in life, the life he wanted to live, the resignation he had accepted in his life, and also showed Josephine's forward attitude to the life she had hoped to live. And so on and so forth. Virgil and his brother's dialogue revealed the decision they had to make to join the law-keeping and curtail and lawlessness of the region. The setting, which was in the 19th century, it depicted the economic lifestyle. Most people were miners, some had made a fortune with gambling, and others were experts in shooting. The weather was hot and dry, raining only once during this whole movie, which was pretty accurate. The soil was poor, no crops, there was very few trees, natural shade was absent. There was little in the form of agriculture. There was scorching days, cold nights, flash floods. All these influenced the economic activity of the region, which was mining of silver at the time. The ladies and gentlemen had to find alternative means to making money, which was, in this case, a lifestyle supported by the nightlife. houses were made of wood, colored and hued in brown, which was relatively accurate representation of the time frame.